So, hello everyone. Welcome to our event. This event is brought to you by Data Talks Club, which is a community of people who love data. We have weekly events, and this event is one of such events. If you want to find out more about the events we have, go to the description. There is a link to the event page, and you will find out more about the events we have. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, now it's the best time to do it. Go under the video and click the subscribe button, and you will get notified about all the videos and streams that we have on our channel. And finally, join our amazing Slack community where you can hang out with other data enthusiasts. During today's interview, you can ask any question you want. There is a link in the live chat. It's pinned, so just click on this link and ask your question. And I will be covering these questions as we go. So if if a question is relevant to the discussion, I will ask Rahul that question. Okay, I think that's all from my side. So let me stop sharing my screen. And now I open the document with questions I prepared. And okay, I am ready. Are you ready?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so this week we'll talk about becoming a data engineering manager, and we have a special guest today, Rahul. Rahul has over 12 years of experience in data and engineering. He has been a manager for the last almost 3 years, and now he works as a data engineering manager at Siemens. Welcome, Rahul.
Thanks, Alexei. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming, for joining us. So before we go into our main topic of becoming a data engineering manager, let's start with your background. Can you tell us about your career journey so far?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks everyone for joining, and thanks, Alexei, for inviting. I started my career in somewhere in 2010, like 12 years back, and started as a traditional ETL developer and working with the databases and relational databases like SQL Server, Oracle, ETL tools like SSIS, SSRS, like Microsoft Stack, and then slowly moved into more of a master data management kind of stuff for enterprise, right? And then somewhere in 2015, started getting into cloud, and the volume of data was increasing, so got some skill set dealing with big data, right? And that got me into more of a data engineering role. So transition from traditional ETL developer or BI developer, you can call it, to more of a data engineering role. And nowadays dealing with a lot of batch data and real-time streaming data, building pipelines, exposing data to consumers, like to downstream systems. So yeah, it's been a very interesting journey in last 12 years, and currently since last 2.5 to 3 years took up this data engineering manager role, where I'm managing a team of enthusiast data engineers here in India, and building IoT data platform for one of the Siemens businesses.
That's pretty cool, a pretty cool journey. So your journey into what we call today data engineering started with cloud adoption, right? So you saw that many companies started to use cloud, and this is when you transitioned from ETL developer to a data engineer, right? Do you think it's different, or just the same thing but under a different name?
No, it's absolutely same. I mean, uh, basics remain same, but you have to acquire a new skill set when this data paradigm is shifting, right? So a lot of things changes when the volume and variety of data grows, right? So in traditional days, we were dealing more likely with the structured data, which is more in relational in nature. But these days, with the evolution of machines and sensors, right, social media, a lot of unstructured and semi-structured data use case we are dealing with.
Mm-hmm. So before you probably used tools like Informatica, Talent, Microsoft Integration Service, right? And now it's I don't know, Kafka, Spark, and things like this, right?
Yeah. It's more custom solutions these days, right, which
Okay.
fits our needs, and moving toward more open source frameworks, right?
Okay, yeah, thanks. So let's talk about data engineering managers. So what do they do and why do we need them?
Yeah. So actually, the core still remains same as a people manager, right? So we have to take care of your team. You have to, keep looking at how your team is moving, your deliverables, etc. But another thing which adds up to this role is stakeholder management, right? When you're working with as an individual contributor, you're just caring about your piece of work. Here you have to talk to various stakeholders who are sponsoring this data platform, as well as who are consumers, right? These days the number of and variety of consumers are also growing. They are the stakeholders for us, right? So as a data engineering manager, you have to take care of them, their needs, right? And again, from the team, your team is also your stakeholder, right? So you have to make sure their skill set are getting upgraded along with the new tools and technologies coming into play, right? And then coaching them, deciding their career path, right? And sometimes other things like within a team deciding for some approach, or sometimes conflict resolutions, right? And one of the most important tasks for data engineering manager or any engineering manager should be prioritizing the task, right? You have a lot of things coming on your way, right, from various stakeholders. So how you prioritize that, that's one of the key responsibilities as well.
Mhm. So you work on a data platform, some internal data platform, right? And you manage
Yes.
data engineers, right?
Yep.
And because the setup we have at OLX is we have engineering managers, and people who report to the engineering managers are backend engineers, front-end engineers, and data engineers, right? So we don't have a role that is called data engineering manager, and
Mhm.
usually there is just an engineering manager who manages the engineers. And I'm wondering, why do we have this? Maybe because we work in so-called feature teams, like a team that works on a specific part of a product and everyone works on the same thing. While in your case, your team takes care of a data platform. So everyone on your team is a data engineer, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Correct.
Yeah. And I guess it's helpful for data engineers to have a manager who is also a data engineer, or at
Mhm.
least who can relate to the problems they have, because this is how they can think what is the best way for their development, for coaching, right? And if we have just a usual engineering manager, they might not know in a lot of details about new data tools and so on, right? That's where you come into picture, and then this is you give suggestions to people, you tell them what is good to learn, right?
Yeah, I think you mentioned very valid point, right? This role, when I talk to other engineering managers, I realized that as a data engineering manager, you have to be in line with some hands-on activities as well. So you should know what your team is working upon at the code level sometimes, right? So that's how I spend my time. Like, I wear two hats here. So 50% of the time I am working as an individual contributor, as a data engineer in my team, and remaining 50% I'm managing the team, right? So as you mentioned it correctly, because sometimes when you have technical brainstorming, or maybe defining roadmaps, then your technical skill sets really comes into play. So a data engineering manager should definitely have some hands on, not only just managing people.
Mm-hmm. But how
Yep.
do you find time to actually do this? Like, how large is your team? How many people do you
So
manage?
currently, in I manage 8 people. So including
Yeah,
me,
and
it's 9 people team. Yeah.
how do you find time? Like, I guess if you just have one-on-ones with everyone on the team, it's like half week is gone already. So
Mhm.
how do you manage to find time to actually work on hands-on activities?
Yeah, actually, it has been changing. So initially, when we started, the team size was small. I was able to do a justice to both the roles, right? Now, since the team size is growing, right? So sometimes it happens, this ratio becomes like 60/40, right? But I am fortunate enough to have a team built around, which is self motivated and self organized kind of team. And as part of Siemens culture, we promote servant leadership, not micromanaging a team, rather enabling them to do their best, right? And as and when they need, they can come to me or come to any of my seniors, etc., my managers. So, and also when we hire, we look for someone who can, own piece of work, right, without a minimal support from a manager or senior folks. So that way, the team is more self-driven, I would say. That's how I could, find out some time for myself on working as an individual contributor. But I know, I agree to your point. Once this team size grows more further, right, then it would be difficult to perform both the roles together. Yeah.
So basically, if I understood you correctly, you have some quite experienced people in your team who can take care of, helping with technical problems, and in general, the team is quite self-organized, so they most of the time do not need you, right? And then
Yes,
you can
absolutely.
focus on other things. Yeah, that's pretty nice to be able to have such a team when you know
Hmm.
that they can just work independently, and if you need to work on something, that you trust them to find a solution to whatever problem they have. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you become a data engineering manager? How did it happen to you?
Interesting. So earlier, when as I mentioned, when this team size was less, like we had 4 data engineers, including me, and that time we all used to report to my manager, who is currently my manager, and since the business started growing, right, and the need of data platform, we proved some of the use cases that platform can solve. That's how we were getting more and more use cases. So naturally, the team size was increasing. And that time, my manager, who is my current manager, he just called me to a discussion, one-on-one discussion, and asked if I want to take up the engineering manager role. And my reaction was, why me, right? We have other folks. So basically, what I realized is, he mentioned a couple of qualities which he saw in me. I mean, I was not frankly aware about those things. So he said the ability to see bigger picture, right, what business problem we are solving, right, that you can do, along with some business acumen, domain knowledge, and situational understanding, right, what is needed when. That kind of quality he saw, and he asked me this. And he mentioned that, once you take up this role, you have to sacrifice few things, like we all are passionate about, writing code and, building stuff, deploying that. But if I take up this role, then I have to sacrifice like 50% of the time at least. So yeah, that's what a natural evolution. I was hired as a senior data engineer, but and immediately after 6 months or so, took up this engineering manager role.
Interesting. So the qualities you mentioned, being able to see the bigger picture, know what the business problems are, and you mentioned this situational understanding, what is needed and when. So do you think this
Mhm.
is so for somebody who is a senior and who wants to become a manager, is it enough to have these things to become
No,
a?
I think these are the essential ingredients. But I think one thing I forgot to mention is about people skill, right? That is most important. So, in one word, I would say empathy, right? That is something. It's more of behavioral factor, right? So. Whether you can empathize with the team, or people who reports to you, right, that's one of the most important ingredient. And then these things, and along with some technical skills and business knowledge, as I mentioned.
So how do you think technical skills are they important for this role, or maybe they are less important than empathy, seeing the bigger picture, knowing the business needs and other things?
I think they're equally important with this role, because this data landscape is changing very fast, right? And new problem statement use cases we are getting day by day. So I have seen in past teams and and managers, they are not able to cope up with the recent technology and trends which are needed to uplift their data platform or data products, right? That's why in data engineering manager especially, you have to uplift yourself always in terms of technology stack.
Mhm.
You may not be going into too much details of solving individual particular issue, but at least the high level idea, the limitations and features of particular products or offerings, right, you should be aware about.
Mhm. Okay, so let's say for an example, if You use Airflow right now. You heard that there is a tool called Prefect, which might be nicer, and then maybe you allocate some time to give it a try, and then see how is it different from the current technologies you use, and then maybe you also show others, hey, this is the tool I played with, let's give it a try, right? Or let's not give it a try because it doesn't really work for us. So doing things like this, right? Just trying new tools and then, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So along with some senior data engineers or in team, right? You just brainstorm, I mean, what problems this tool can solve for us, right? And it has some various angles like cost involved, and licensing fees, etc., and how easy to work. So all type of analysis, as a data engineering manager, you should be able to contribute to certain those kind of discussions, right? So that's why I think technical know-how is not negotiable. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And for you, I think it's especially important because you spend 40 to 50% of your time on hands-on activities, right? So you wouldn't be able to do this if you didn't have these technical skills.
Absolutely. That's why consciously I chose this. I have the flexibility here in Siemens to be, to become a full-time people manager, right? Without giving much time to technical, but consciously I chose this way. So to be, in line with technical trends. Yeah.
So you had this chat with your manager, and he told you, hey, like you're doing such a good job as a data engineer. How about becoming a manager? So your first reaction was, why me, right? But
Yeah.
then I guess it took some time for you to think about this and agree, right? And after that, what did you do next? Like, did you do anything to make this transition smooth, or?
Uh, Not exactly, to be very honest, right? I didn't jot out any plan, right? Because the uh, team was growing at that point of time, and though I got involved in some hiring, etc., but I did not had any plan at that point of time. So it was more natural evolution. But in last 2.5 to 3 years, I have learned many things which I was not doing initially, and few things I have learned which I could have done better, when I took up this role. So at this point I would say it was more organic, and I learned on the job, and a lot of time I used to do one-to-one with my manager to understand, how I should be thinking, not as an individual contributor but as a engineering manager, right? So yeah, but I think when I reflect back, I think I could have done better planning, right? Like 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days plan, something like that. And yeah, and then it would have been much more smoother journey, but still, it was quite decent journey for this transition.
So learning by trial and error, right?
Yeah, sometimes few things I have learned hard way, which I could have avoided, but it's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and what were the main challenges for you, like in this transition?
Um, yeah, at the beginning, the first challenge was to get accepted in a team, right? Because you are one of the team member who just elevated as a data engineering manager, and so building trust with the existing team, and get yourself accepted, right? So that was the biggest challenge initially. And then later I realized I was getting into all the stuff, right? Like each and every piece of work without prioritizing them, right? And it was really overwhelming. So that thing I learned, how you prioritize, because see, when you're dealing with multiple stakeholders, right? People are coming from everywhere, right? Um, and too much context switching you are doing, right? And it's difficult to focus on certain things. So this was biggest challenge initially, and over the period of time I learn, reflect back and learn again. You cannot achieve everything, right, which is on your plate, so you have to prioritize the high priority items, critical items, and then go with that. And one more challenge, initially, how I spent a lot of thinking about it, how you uplift your team, right? That's one of your core responsibility. So currently, if my team is delivering or stand at particular quality of individuals, next year if I am able to uplift them or not, are they getting better or not? That was the initial challenge.
How about delegating? Was it difficult for you to, well, you said you realized that you cannot achieve everything, you cannot do everything yourself. And how did you realize, okay, like I cannot do this thing, I need to delegate it to somebody else? How was this for you? Was it difficult? How did you learn to do this?
It was difficult, and it is difficult, to be honest, right, at this point also, because the culture we have here in Siemens, right, you do not dictate things to people, right? It's more open culture. So in this case, influencing, right, somebody to take a few things is really tricky part. I'm still learning that, and I have learned a lot in recent times. So and this comes from the trust, right? If somebody have trust on you, right, and they can just take a few things which are maybe not interesting in nature, right, they do not like doing it, but just to support you they will do it. So still that's a learning for me, but yeah, that was a challenge initially. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, and yeah, you said, well, if you needed to go through this process again, you would use this, you would do better planning. You mentioned this 30, 60, 90
Yeah.
day thing. Um, Maybe can you tell us a bit more about that? And what else would you do differently if you needed to go through this transition again?
Yeah, again, when I reflect back, I see, initially I was very, you know, uh, playing very safe, I would say. That not questioning people if something is not working well, just trying to build some trust. And I thought, and not questioning people, not very assertive in the beginning, because I didn't want to, counter them, with certain question. And the relationship I thought will be good by this way, right? To start with. But I think few things where I could have, be more assertive with the team and with some of the stakeholders, right? Um, on some non-negotiable items. That's something which I would do if I get the chance again to relive those moments. And I think the another thing which I should have done in the very beginning is setting out clear expectation with the team, right? So defining core goals and objectives, etc., and how together as a team we will achieve, or individual, right, they will achieve. So that part I started a little late, but I think I should have done much earlier. Yeah.
How to do this? How do you set clear expectations of a team? So let's say you have a team that works on a data platform for IoT, right? In your case, so how do you set expectations? How do you understand what I don't know, team purpose or these things, right?
Yeah.
How do you do this?
Yeah, it took quite some time to build that framework, right, to set this, because see, the nature of business is changing very dynamically, right? And uh, you you will have requirement changing very often, right? Then what I did, and we did as an organization and as a team, I did is defining goals in two categories. One is like we are committed objectives or goals, or another category is aspirational goals, right? So committed objective, we put certain things that you should not be missing delivery timelines, no spillover in the next sprint, code quality should be good, no defect, all those things which are expected out of a software engineer or data engineer. Those are committed goals which are non-negotiable, right, that you have to achieve, right? And we have certain matrices to track those and to uplift the team, right? Because see, with the mature team, all committed goals are more or less met always, right? But the challenge come where you want to uplift the game. So those kind of goals, like how you modernize your data platform, right, or how you challenge the status quo of the processes which we were following. So those goals I have put it in as part of aspirational targets or aspirational goals. And those aspirational goals should be big enough that you should not be able to achieve 100%, right? That's what comes we call an aspirational goal. If you achieve 50-70%, then you're good to go. So that way we are trying to build a framework for expectation management and performance management.
Yeah, thanks. And we have a related question from Locke. The question is, what are the success measures of a data engineering team?
Okay, as a team, I would say success measure is how you enable or cultivate the data culture within the organization, right? Or within the among the stakeholders who are interacting with you, right? And the decisions which before the data team into picture, if somebody was taking on based on the judgmental call or gut feelings, right, those should be more data driven in nature. So that's the I think not tangible thing, but it's a cultural thing. Tangible, I would say, if we are able to serve more and more use cases in terms of for our data consumers, and easy, and by removing some of the frictions, right, and how easy we can expose our data to various stakeholders in different formats. It could be like reporting, visualization, some RESTful APIs for applications, right, or for some data for machine learning or data science community within the organization. So the variety of use cases you are able to support with use of data platform, I think that's one of the KPI for the success.
Yeah, interesting. And yeah, I guess, are there any other formal metrics? Because I usually don't see, so we
Yes.
have objectives, right? So, and then you probably look at objectives if you're to understand if the team is moving in the right directions. So apart from that, maybe there is no need to have other formal metrics and KPIs for the team, right?
We capture some of the metrics like data quality matrices, like we capture, right, and data reconciliation framework we have, right, and we capture in terms of percentage, right, for different line of businesses of data, and along with that some basic percentage coverage of our source system data, what we have to offer, and how we are enriching the data. So how we uplifted the quality of the data, right, using some smart ways of including third-party data, etc. So I know, I mean, it's very difficult to measure, right, the success of data platform, because it sits at the back end, right? There is certain limits you can, as a metrics, you can put, right? But I think one of the key metrics is how many consumers you're serving. They're interested in your data.
Yeah, that's a good one. What is data reconciliation?
It's basically you're pulling data from various source systems, loading into your data warehouse or data lake, right? In between, there is a ETL layer or ELT layer involved, right? So what we do once our data load is done in batch mode or real-time mode, we reconcile with what we had in the source system versus target, right? Are we losing any data in between or not? So that kind of framework we have built here.
Yeah, you are not supposed to lose any data, right? So it should be like
Absolutely, yes.
right?
Yeah.
So why can we lose something? Because of downtime, right?
Because of downtime, because of your leakages in your ETL pipeline, right? You are filtering some data, let's say, or um, not putting proper exceptional handling. Sometimes that's how you lose the data.
Yeah, and there's a question related, I think, to data platform. So data engineering is moving towards full automation with data versioning and managed model serving. How do you solve the GDPR compliance issues and bring stakeholders on board? That's quite maybe not an easy question, right?
Yeah,
Do
I
you worry
mean,
about this at all, like GDPR in your case for IoT?
absolutely. So we do not have those many GDPR related compliances in terms of our business is B2B, right? It's not related to end customer, but still we cater to certain data sets which have to be GDPR compliant, right? So we have put it the data platform we have chosen for basically the data warehouse tool we have chosen is cloud-based, and where we do a lot of dynamic data masking, and which is a lot different than the static data masking in traditional days, right? So, and we have role-based access control put it on top of it. So certain people only can see certain kind of data, right? So we have tagged the data, classified our data in terms of highly classified and public data sets, and then put it dynamic data masking and role-based access control on top of it. So only relevant people can access, authorized people can access the data which they're supposed to.
Mm-hmm. And dynamic data masking is when you see some personal data or some restricted data, then it is replaced with something else, right? So let's say instead of email, you see a hash or something, right?
Yeah, hash or cross or asterisk sign, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, nice, thanks. Another question from Nishikant is, how do you handle data modeling for big data? Like, do you do agile or something like this to handle evolving requirements?
Yeah, initially we had quite a lot of challenge with this, right? Because we have defined certain data model, and the variety of use cases started increasing. And earlier we were following typical ETL methodology, right, where we extract the data, transform, and load into a target data model. And that was very tightly coupled. The data model was very fixed in nature, right? And that's how we realized we cannot live with that. It's not scalable and flexible, and we changed our approach to from ETL to ELT. So basically pulling the data, loading into our data warehouse, and then transforming it on the go. So that's how our data model became more resilient, right, and flexible in nature, and with less dependency on different data marts or tables, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's how. And also we have implemented data lake also for in our data platform, and which is more robust in nature compared to data warehouse.
So if something changes, then it means that maybe you will need to go back to, I don't know, previous year and recompute some things if you do a change in schema, right? Because you keep the raw data in your data lake, and then if you do some changes in your data model, then you just go and recompute it.
Yes, so we do not change data models so often, right? Rather, we have flat data model in place. So we serve the consumers and perform all these aggregation at the real time, in most of the use cases. But certain piece of data, which is kind of master data, is more, structured in nature. And there we have, very traditional data models. So basically, in order to handle big data, right, we are dealing with the combination of a data model, traditional data model, flat data model, as well as the data lake.
And what if the raw data changes? Then I guess you will need to somehow think how exactly you can read the old raw data and the new raw data, right?
Yeah, so data lineage we are maintaining here, right? So and a lot of time the old data we put in cache, which are most frequently used, right, in our warehouse. And when the new data comes, we recalculate that, invalidate and reactivate the cache to serve faster to the customers.
Yeah, okay, back to our topic of the data engineering management, because there are still a few things I wanted to ask you.
Mm-hmm.
So, what would you suggest to somebody who is transitioning right now into a data management, into engineering management role, and specifically to data engineering management role?
Yeah, I think few things you have to accept, and from the day one is you cannot continue playing the individual contributor role because you have limited time, right? This is what I have seen. Some of the mistakes people make more often is they still uh, are very much fascinated about the coding part of it, but you have to just uplift yourself and just see a bigger picture, from uh, for whole business point of view, what problem you're solving, right? And the second thing is empathy, right? If you're genuinely interested in the growth of your team members, right? And that shows, right? And that is clearly visible. So each and every team members, you have to have certain career planning, right? Sitting with them, knowing their aspirations, right? Excuse me. And build some career planning and enable them, to achieve those skills, or those goals which they aim for.
Mhm.
So just to summarize, I would say, you let go few technical things, right? Going much deeper into all the technical aspects, and then empathize with the team members, right?
Mhm.
And also you have to, be on top of the game, right? You have to know what the latest trends are going on. That's how you can enable your team to think in certain direction, right? Or expose these new area of work to them.
Yeah, that was the question I wanted to ask you, how exactly you enable team members. So one thing is be on top of latest trends. How do you actually do this? How do you stay on top of trends? Because like in data engineering, well, I'm a data scientist, and in data science, there are so many things happening. It's just
Yeah.
simply impossible to stay on top. In data engineering, I think is also like it's an actively developing area. New tools appear, new ways of doing stuff appear. How do you manage to stay on top of that?
So when I say standard of, it's not necessarily mean that you always change your platforms, tools, and techniques, right? Because that's
But
not something you need certain kind of yeah, still stability you need, right? So when I say reinventing yourself is and getting better at what you did. So for example, let's say when somebody new data engineer joined my team, and it took like 2 weeks or 3 weeks to develop a data pipeline, right? Test it, deploy it into production. Next time, if the same pipeline comes or similar kind of work comes, right, it should take a little less than that. That's how you grow. And second thing is, we have come a certain way, right, in last 2 to 3 years with the maturity of data platform, right? What all things, right, which we can make more modular, right? And some of the things which we can automate, we have to constantly think about those lines. And team members are not doing monotonous work, right? That should be the benchmark. When you challenge that monotonous work, obviously you will try to figure out new ways or smart ways of doing the same work. That's how indirectly your team will be challenging a status quo always.
okay, so it's not about staying up to date with, I don't know, state of the art and knowing all the recent technologies. It's more about knowing what's happening in the team and how we can make their lives easier and uh, the work more interesting, right?
Yeah, other way around, it's sometimes a challenge, right? How you keep restricts, or maybe put some restrictions, because people are very passionate about, okay, I want to implement this, or the new tool in the market, or automation, right? Build versus buy, all those things. But you have to just sit, calm your team, and just focus on the end goal, right? What we are trying to achieve. Not get fascinated with the technology or new tool sets or SaaS offerings each day, or continuously.
Yeah, that's very easy to do because you hear all this, um, you see all these tools appear, people on Twitter talk about this and other social media, and it feels like, okay, this is the tool, I need to stop doing everything and try this. But this tool is not actually solving your business problem, right? And then
Yeah.
you need to know about this. Okay. And what, in your opinion, are the qualities um, of and skills that a team, a data team, people in the data team should know? Because you manage a team, right, as a data
Mhm.
engineer manager. Um, so, what qualities the team should have?
Yeah, I think first of all, I start with understanding the problem statement, right? Or the business problem. Sometimes there is no problem, but using the power of data, you can, you know, um, solve certain use cases, right? So first, the team should be mature, or think from that direction, and then comes the technology part into it, right? So basic, if I talk about tech stack, right? So I always go to very basics, like you should, as a data engineer, you should know SQL, right? ETL concept, data warehousing concepts, right? And then at least one scripting language like Python or Spark, right? um, and typical CI/CD framework, etc. So these things, and cloud these days, right? So these are the basics which are important, which are non-negotiable, I would say, in current situations. And ownership is something which I think is most important piece. Yeah.
What is ownership?
Ownership is basically if certain decision you're taking, right, and if something goes wrong, or maybe something fails, that you own that, and you do not go into certain blame games, or you just try to fix it first, and then we see what happens.
Okay.
Without interfering, without getting asked from managers or senior people or stakeholders, right?
Okay. Like something breaks, you don't wait till your manager comes and says, hey, why this pipeline is not working, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So initially I used to get a lot of alerts, right, when something fails, but then I just delegated that work, that and we decided the ownership of certain pieces where I would not be receiving the alert. I trust the team, they take care of these things, right?
Okay, so technology-wise, you said the non-negotiable minimum in SQL, knowing what ETL is, knowing data warehouse, one scripting language like Python, knowing the concept of CI/CD, and knowing a cloud platform.
Yeah.
That's technology. And then also like this business acumen, knowing the problems and this. So these are the qualities that people in the data engineering team, data engineers should have, right?
Yeah.
Ownership, right? We also mentioned ownership.
Yeah.
And as a manager, you probably take a lot of time in hiring people. So I guess these are the things you are looking in candidates, right? You ask them, you want to see these qualities in the candidates, right?
Absolutely. Plus one more thing I would say, when it comes to hiring, right, especially with this remote work environment, right, this something called communication skill, right, it becomes very important. How you communicate, how proactive you are, right? And one thing I look for, very first question sometimes I ask to the candidate is, just explain in 5 minutes, right, one of your best project you implemented or you're part of. So I would say how a candidate articulate things, right, and stay to very precise answer in what question has been asked, just stick to the answer for it. So that is something, I mean, it was important before this pandemic, but nowadays it became more important.
So explain in your project in 5 minutes. So in this 5 minutes part, I guess is also quite important, right? Because I imagine if somebody asks me about a project I'm proud of, then yeah, maybe they will need to stop me at some point because I can just go on and on and on, right? So here you have to be concise, right?
You have to be concise, and just think of if you're explaining these things up to maybe non-data or non-IT people, right? So how would you explain this? Not going to too much technical details, but first start with a business use case and what you or your team did to solve it. That's why I keep this limit of 5 minutes, just to finish it in 5 minutes. If I have any further questions, if I'm interested or to know something more and dig deeper into it, then following questions takes place.
So start with when talking about a project, you should start with a business problem. So you do not jump into, I don't know, I was using Spark to move 1 TB of data in Parquet from S3 to, I don't know, Google Cloud Storage, right? Nobody can care.
Absolutely.
Start with business problem.
That's a very common mistake, I would say, people do, that they directly jump into a technology part of it. I mean, that's not something they're passionate about, but right. But
Yes.
still, yeah. But still, you have to be able to articulate these things in lesser time.
Yeah, because this is a mistake I also do quite often, like because I'm so proud of what I built and I want to talk about this, and then I forget about that actually I was not doing this for the sake of doing this, right? That there was some problem that I was trying to solve, and yeah, that's important to bring this up. And what else do you ask on the interview?
Generally, initially I used to part of technical screening as well, but these days focus is more on hiring manager round. So somebody from my team or peer teams, they take technical discussions, right? And if that goes through, then in the hiring manager round, I mostly focus on, as I mentioned, about the project. And second thing is just try to gauge what a candidate, not focusing on the past, what they have done in the past, but what they can do in the future for your team or your organization, right? That we have to, I mean, it's difficult, but asking certain incidents and how they will react. And sometimes I put them into certain situations which are more hypothetical situations, right? And how they respond to that. So for example, um, you know for example, if you want to launch amazon.com in Antarctica, right? Or launch Uber in China, right? So that gives me the thought process. It's not related to directly data engineering concepts, but how a person thinks about a problem, and the answer may not be, I mean, not be 100% right, obviously, right? It's just approach which I try to gauge. And along with that, certain leadership qualities like customer obsession, right? And tell some incident about which explain their customer obsession, and their ownership, as I mentioned, right? So discussion along these lines.
Mhm. So what's the right answer to how you open Amazon in Antarctica?
I don't know. I don't know the right answer, right? Because if Amazon, let's say, hires me and ask me to do it, I may not be right person for doing it. But I think this starts with you know I mean, there could be many right answers to it, right?
Like you
It's just
don't
approach.
open Amazon, for example, in Antarctica.
Sorry.
Also, maybe the right answer is you don't open it there. Like it could also be
No, that's the
not an option.
prerequisite that you have to.
Okay.
You cannot bypass that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell us about your best hire?
Um. Yeah, I think couple of them in recent times, right? So similar qualities they have shown, right? When we gone through. So as I mentioned, these are technical skill set plus the hiring manager behavioral skills, which I try to judge people on. That's something. And another, when you talk about best hire, right? Something has to be different than the other hires, right? So I recall, like 6 months back, one hire, and then 8th month before 2 months that. So those, both of those guys, they adhere to all these qualities which we were trying to judge. But on top of it, they were very keen on understanding our use cases, what we are trying to achieve, and the job fitment basically. So in short term and mid term, what do I expect as a uh, engineering manager with those guys. So they were trying to gauge that, not just applying for a random job and just appearing for interview. They did a lot of due diligence about the company and about the team. They reached out to other team members over LinkedIn, saw their profiles, where they come from. All these due diligence they did. And once the interview round was finished, we were about to go to HR discussion. Both of them separately, right? They asked to have one more discussion with me, where um, they kind of interviewed me, about obviously their career path, and what's the next role they should be aspire for in the organization, right? And talking a lot about culture. So that gives sometimes that shows the genuinity, right? Whether you want to work for organization or not. So I would say due diligence is something, and assertiveness was, which sets best hire part with the other hires. Yeah.
Mhm. And to what I heard from all this is if you want to impress a hiring manager, ask the recruiters to schedule one more interview.
Oh my God, you you just exposed this.
Yeah. There is a quite related question from Frederick. So the question is about hiring data engineers. And I also saw this, that we often get candidates who just put a lot of buzzwords in their CVs, like big data, secure-oriented, scalable. Then you add a bunch of technologies like Spark, Flink, what else is there, like Pulsar, Kafka. Like you just put a lot of buzzwords there. And of course, I imagine that these people pass the first recruiter filter, right? So because like all the keywords match, but then at the end, maybe apart from buzzwords, there is no like real knowledge. So how do you solve this as a data engineering manager before the interview? Is there a way to somehow spot this these candidates?
Before the interview, it's a little difficult, right? Because in the screening, you just have a profile or resume in front of you, right? There, I think nobody reads whole resume because we don't have that much time, right? You just glance on few things. That's it. But I think during the HR discussion, so what we did recently is passed on certain questions to HR to just get idea of it. But if let's say candidate goes through it, then again somehow most of the time I capture this during the hiring manager round most of the time, because these guys sometimes tend to clear the technical rounds as well. But we had internal discussions with my technical interview panels, that how you spot these things, right? So we, instead of directly jumping into raw technical questions, we start with if we find certain things which is not adding up, like certain technology or framework which they claim they worked upon, then we ask them to uh, give us a scenario, why they use this technology, or in which scenario they use this kind of technology. And there you can just classify simply if this guy has just mentioned this for the sake of mentioning or worked with it. So asking very basic questions like, for example, somebody claims that I worked on data lake and data warehouse. So you just ask what is the difference between data lake and data warehouse, right? Or on-premise and cloud. These very basic questions, right? If they are able to articulate or mention this, then fine. Otherwise, you can spot these things. Yeah.
To basically ask about the context in which this technology was used. If somebody says they used, I don't know, Kafka, then ask why Kafka? What
Yeah.
was the problem you were solving, and what were the alternatives, and why you decided to use this particular technology versus alternatives, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. The context is very important. Yeah.
I remember I was also doing CV screening, and I saw a person mentioned all these bash tools like Oak, Set, Perl, and all that, And I was, on one hand, I really wanted to ask that person, like, hey, do you really know all that? And then on the other hand, is because I don't know this myself, and people who know this thing, they, to me, like, I don't know, they really impressed me. So I wasn't sure if they just put this for the sake of putting this. Like, let's say if you don't know a technology, but you see somebody put this, and you know that this is difficult, like it's a complex technology. How do you assess if they actually know what they are talking about?
Yeah, that's difficult. So, so what I do is, it happens sometimes. It's not very often, but it happens. So what I do is, during the interview, I just open up that particular that technology or tool, right, which they mentioned. Just a search on the Google, right, a simple search, which opens that company website or Wikipedia, and that gives what this tool is all about, right, in like 2 lines, right? And then, I mean, and it comes with experience also, right? If you do it again and again, that you build the habit of understanding a new technology, not understanding the technology, but understanding the concept of that technology, why that exists. So yeah, at the same time, I just open a browser and just while candidate is explaining, I get certain questions around those technologies. Yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe they can also do that, right? Open Wikipedia page and
No, but
before
yeah,
they.
you can just but you can just read few things from there, right? But the question would not be directly from that Wikipedia page or the website,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It,
that makes sense. There's a question from Crucial. Is So I think they are a second-year student, and the question is what we can do, what would you suggest to ace in being a data engineer?
Yeah, for recent college graduate or students, right? I would say focus on basics here, right? Do not jump into any specific tools or technology. Sometimes it happens. It happened with me as well when I was starting my IT journey, right? That time, I think Informatica and these tools were very famous in the market. So don't focus on particular tools and technology. Rather, in your college days, focus on basics like how database management system works, right? And um, like basics of SQL and some Python, maybe, right? Just try to understand how software engineering works at that point of time, and just get to know basic terms of what is data warehouse, what is ETL, before getting too much attached to any enterprise tools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I
So
guess
build the basics first, and then later jump into what industry demands.
mm-hmm. Yeah, because I guess if we talk about a 4-year program and you're currently in a second-year program, maybe by the time you graduate, the tools that are popular right now will not be popular anymore, right? And
Absolutely.
you in like Informatica was very popular, but now how many people use it? I think still they have like a large piece of the cake, right?
Mm-hmm.
So of the market share, but still I don't think it's as widespread as it used to be, right? So maybe it's
Yeah.
better to invest your time in learning something that is more commonly used. But how do you know what will
Yeah.
be more commonly used in 2 years? You don't, right?
You don't. So you have to be, see, that's the shift I'm seeing these days, right? With the great candidate versus average candidate you hire, right? Person who is able to reinvent themselves, right, again and again, right, and just get better again and again. That is something uh, which sets apart, with other average candidates who are more focused on understanding any technology or tools, right? So, excuse me. Just if your basics are right, and these three, four uh, technologies, right, querying in Python, etc., then you should be good learning any new tool in the market. And these days, these tools are very user friendly, I would say, or developer friendly, right? A lot of good UI they're putting into place and very easy to use. So it's a matter of few days or weeks to learn a new tool. Yeah.
Yes, there is one question, probably last one, because I see we should be wrapping up. But this question has 7 upvotes, so I think I have to ask it. So a
Mm-hmm.
question from Akshay is, I want to know real-world end-to-end process of how a data engineering team design, build, deploy, and monitor with structured and unstructured data in both real and batch. I think this is too much for 1 minute that we have left,
Yeah.
but maybe you can give
I,
us like an overview.
I think we should have another session, dedicated to this piece, right? Which can, last couple of hours, right? But anyways, just to summarize this, in the matter of time is, so there are different pieces of data engineering, right, end to end. So first is you start with the source systems where data exists, right? It could be relational database, flat files, cloud, S3, all these things. And you build one data pipeline to pull data from source systems and load into your data warehouse or data lake, that is your centralized data hub. And then you build one process to expose this data, because this is one first part of it. You have all the data in data warehouse, but how a consumer who is interested in your data will consume it. So there could be various methods of consuming the data, in terms of, you have, let's say, reporting tool or visualization tool, and you have certain APIs built on top of your data warehouse platforms which can serve any applications in real time. You can have some another ETL layer for, some other consumers who are interested in your data. So these whole end-to-end system can be in batch mode also, which runs daily or weekly load. And second thing is, it can be event based also. So the moment data arrive in your source system, you can have certain events listening to that source system. For example, let's say S3 bucket, right? Your file lands on S3 bucket, your Lambda function get triggered. I am talking in terms of AWS terminologies, and that puts your reads data from S3 buckets and load into your data warehouse. So that is more real time. Or if you talk about streaming, then you have Kafka or any message brokers, which can connect to real time data with your warehouse. right? So I would say, just to summarize this, focus not only just bringing data into data warehouse, but a second part, which is how you expose that data. If nobody is able to consume your data, then your data warehouse is not worthy or useful at all, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks a lot. What's the best way to find you if somebody has questions? Is it LinkedIn or there are other ways?
Yeah, LinkedIn is like these days spending a lot of time on LinkedIn. So yeah, please reach out on LinkedIn, and you can put maybe the LinkedIn profile in this
Yes, I
description.
will.
Yep.
And
Okay.
if I need to put anything else in the description, just send me the links and I will do this. And I
Mm-hmm.
would like to thank you a lot for joining us today, for sharing your experience, for answering so many tough questions, and also sharing your personal experience from transitioning and also telling about problems. And I would also like to thank everyone who joined us today and asked questions. And I would like to wish everyone to have a great weekend. And yeah, well, see you
Yep.
next.
Thanks for inviting, Alexei. It was really interesting discussion, right? I could not, realize that 1 hour already passed, right?
Yeah.
And thanks for asking great question, guys. And stay in touch. Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, as I mentioned, and hope to talk to you guys again.
Okay, great.